Hey guys, today we're going to talk about Project Vast. Never heard of it? Either have I. But that's okay, because I have a well-dressed teddy bear on my shirt. Hey guys, and welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about Project Vast, and I have two gentlemen with me. The first one is Security PFE extraordinaire, John Shechtman. John, how's it going?
Hey, Lex, buddy. How are you? I am great.
Good,
Thanks
man.
for having me, bud.
You know, if people only heard the crap we talk about before we start filming the show, it would be hilarious.
Mics are closed then.
Yep. And then I also have with me Principal PFE, Brian Delaney. And Brian, there's not many principals out there, man. Congratulations.
Thanks, Lex. Thanks for having us on the show.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Project Vast today, and I don't really know a lot about Project Vast. I will be completely honest with you guys. So I'm kind of counting on you guys to tell me and our audience exactly what Project Vast is and kind of tell us why it's important.
Absolutely. Be happy to, Lex. Thanks again for having us. So Project Vast is the Visual Auditing Security Tool. So it's an acronym. And it really comes out of our experiences with customers doing our security work, in which we were telling our security story, and we hit a really predictable and repeatable set of blockers with customers. So we would often tell customers a narrative about auditing and about checking their logs and about really intensely seeing what's going on in their directory. But we found that it wasn't really very successful because we didn't have a really good way to do this. Excuse me. So what we did is we created a couple of solutions that really morphed into Vast, which entail a much better way to log and audit Active Directory to remove these security blockers, as well as to put data at the hands and fingertips of our decision makers. So let's take a look. Let me share my screen. So Lex, one of the issues that we see at really nearly 100% of the customers we work with are insecure LDAP calls. So folks may be aware that Active Directory is among other things, a large LDAP store in which you can return information about the objects in Active Directory. So I could do a query and say, I want to know everybody's manager in the Toronto office, for example, or I want to know everybody's phone number in the Miami data center. So you can do things like that.
Yeah.
And it works well. The problem is that it's often misconfigured in customer environments so that we are sending plain text back and forth. So it could be sensitive information that we're sending. It could also be, and usually is, credential information. So we're sending usernames and passwords, which doesn't really end very well usually in this age of security and attackers.
Right. Yeah. I see that all the time. I'm a networking guy. So when I look at traces, you know, it's very easy to, and to be honest with you, it's a pretty good troubleshooting tool in most cases, right? I mean, I can open up an LDAP query and see what we're asking for and then look at the response and make sure that we got what we asked for. But it is a little bit insecure or unsecure because you can see all of that data in plain text in most cases.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it works well for networking, but the problem with that is that attackers can also use those same networking tools and grab that same amount of data.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we want to do is work with customers in this first example, and there are many examples that we're addressing with Project Vast, but in this first example, we want to work with customers so that they can put some SSL or TLS around their LDAP calls so that they can put some encryption as well as perhaps some signing, and that's client-based. So typically what happens is customers will understand that and will be a little bit cautious, rightly so, because if they turn this on the domain controller and enforce encryption, then they typically break all of the LDAP calls going on in the environment that can't support it. So we get in this sort of chicken and egg scenario.
Yeah.
And we'll often tell customers, let's have a look at the logs. So we can easily log what's happening on the Active Directory side. We use event ID 2889. And in turning up logging, it's called field engineering logging, we can actually see these logs for each and every insecure LDAP call. We get an IP address, a port, and we get the name of an account. So the data is there. It's just not very extensible, and it's not really very usable to go to every domain controller and look at each and every query. So, and this is true of many different scenarios that we see in addition to LDAP. So what we've done is we've looked at different ways to consolidate this data and to make it really actionable for customers, really to take customers out of the whole business of having to look at log files and to aggregate them, and to go through these log files in ways that really aren't totally very successful. And that was really the genesis for Project VAST. So when we look at Project VAST, I promise no death by PowerPoint here. We're just going to look at one slide. Project VAST is this. It has a couple of stages, and we really bring the power of cloud computing and the rich visualization of Power BI to leverage here. So first thing we do is we set up some auditing on our domain controllers. We want to make sure we're capturing the relevant events. So for example, in the example we've been talking about, we want to capture 2889s. Every time there's an insecure LDAP call made, we want a record of it on our domain controllers. Then what we're going to do, and here's where the cloud comes into it, using the power of Azure on each domain controller, we're going to aggregate the logs into Azure Log Analytics. So think of it like any other database. It's just a really large, extensible database. And the nice thing about the cloud is that we don't really have to take care of it. We just sort of use what we need out of Azure Log Analytics. So we've got this aggregation technique going on with the cloud. Then we can fish out exactly what we need. We can pinpoint the data that we need with what's called a Cousteau query, which is just the language that Log Analytics uses. So out of this large amount of data that we can pull in, potentially millions of rows, we can pinpoint exactly the data we want, and we can ask the cloud, Azure services, to return it in exactly the format that we want. Once we've identified the data, we can then pull it into Power BI, and we can start to give that rich visual fullness and auditing visually that we're so used to and that we know and love about Power BI. And that's what we'll be showing next.
So as John was showing the detail of the event inside of Event Viewer, this is what it looks like inside of Power BI once we've extracted that specific data that we're targeting. This is that same insecure LDAP scenario that you saw in the event logs a moment ago, visualized in Power BI. In the top left corner, we can see the actual traffic flow. So instead of combing through thousands, maybe tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of events to see where the source of all this insecure LDAP is, we get a simple visualization to show that flow of traffic. Not only do we see where it's coming from on the left and where it's going to on the right, but the actual size of the bars indicate the volume of the flow. So the bigger the bar, the more insecure LDAP traffic that we have. In the bottom corner, we also visualize it over time. So if you think you might have remediated the problem, if you found the source of that insecure LDAP, you can see if it's actually how it's trending over the last 7 days by extracting that data out of the Log Analytics instance over time. It looks like it's staying pretty steady. Today is just partway through, so we see a little bit of a drop-off, but that's to be expected at this point in time. Mm-hmm. We also have an account view. So if you want to kind of look at your top offenders, right, it's kind of difficult to find the right place to start when you might have hundreds of accounts doing insecure LDAP. So maybe we might want to start with our top offenders. And in this visualization over here, we can see the ones that are doing it the most. Now you might notice there's a bit of color coding on it. And this is actually what we can do in Power BI that we can't do in the log files. The log files tell us the account, but we're able to correlate other data sources together inside of Power BI and highlight other information. For example, this color coding is based on whether or not the account is an administrator inside of Active Directory. Because all plain text passwords are bad, but if it's an administrator, a domain admin, or an enterprise admin, that just makes it that little bit worse that you're sending that across the network in plain text. So perhaps we might want to target our administrative insecure LDAP before we target the standard user LDAP. Now with Power BI, one of the beautiful things about it is that it's all interactive. So if I want to target this SVC1 account and I want to know where to start, all I need to do is click on that bar and the rest of the page will re-highlight and refocus on that particular data. So now my timeline is showing that specific account over time. My traffic flow is showing where it's coming from and where it's going to. So in this particular case, to remediate this SVC1 insecure LDAP, I just need to go to this source machine 2.67 and find out what application or service on it is actually making those LDAP calls. So instead of going through potentially hundreds of DC logs, consolidating all that information manually and just kind of working them through one at a time, we have this ability to just aggregate this information and make administrative jobs a whole lot easier all in one view.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It looks like it's all John's fault.
Yeah, John's a common user of insecure LDAP, that's for sure. Yeah. Another challenge that we've tried to target that we see customers still struggling with is just account cleanup. You know, users that have been in the environment for 10 years, left the company 5 years ago, but the account for some reason doesn't get disabled or doesn't get deleted in the environment. And we want to kind of target those sorts of things because, you know, we still see a lot of manual scripts and a lot of manual effort, and it doesn't necessarily highlight all of those problems. The other area I want to add to that is accounts that are in use but have that nasty password never expires flag, where people might be using it as a service, but haven't changed the password in 15 years. So we want to kind of focus on those accounts as well, and we have a rich visualization to actually do that. So if I'm targeting, for example, an account that has password never expires, I can just hit this slicer over on the right to say password never expires true. I can say, okay, show me the ones that in addition to having password never expires also haven't changed their password in a long time. So I'll set the is stale password, and now it just visualizes that where those kind of accounts are. So I can see they're kind of in the 100 to 400, 500 day range of password age. And the accounts that are furthest to the left are actually ones that are in active use. So they've been logged on in the last 1 to 10 days. So these ones are active but haven't changed their password in a long time. These ones are inactive and haven't changed their password in a long time. So it gives us a really simple way to kind of target strategic accounts for cleanup in the environment. And if you want to pass this work off to someone else, you can actually just go down to this visual that has the list of accounts at the bottom and actually click this ... and then just export the data, send it in an email to your cleanup team, whoever's going to take care of that, and they can go out and target those accounts, change the passwords, or if they're not in use at all, potentially disable the accounts.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. So let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Is there a way on the server? I don't really. I know that we've supported secure LDAP for a long time, but I'm not sure which OS it actually became an option in. But is there a way on the server to disable older clients that don't do secure LDAP?
Not at this time. First of all, I want to focus on two things. There's two key elements to this. One, there's the LDAP bind, and then there's the actual LDAP transaction itself. Right. So if you think about it in the terms of like a website, if you go to an HTTP website, everything you send back and forth to that website is in plain text. So if it's a non-secure site, it's not necessarily a problem that you're using an insecure protocol to do that. But if you're sending credentials, that's really a problem. Or if you're sending other sensitive information like a social security number, that's a problem to send it over an HTTP channel. So likewise, with LDAP, we have that same concept. So we have how do we secure the auth and how do we secure the actual data transmission? So what we're focusing on first is securing the actual bind or that authentication to establish the LDAP session. And that's what the insecure LDAP is really about, is focusing on, no more plain text usernames and passwords across the network. Let's start with that, and then we'll build upon that. Once we get there, then we can start building upon the other scenarios.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's pretty cool, man. I like that. You'd think that at some point we would have some method like HSTS, right? Where if a LDAP bind comes in that's not over secure LDAP, we'll come back and say, hey, you need to redo that over secure LDAP. But I guess we're just not there yet.
Yeah, we're working our way there one bit at a time, right? This other view I want to show, and it's the last one that I'll show today, is about authentication. And a common question that we get from customers is, they see an account on something like the user hygiene tab, and they see it hasn't been logged on to in 100 days or 200 days or more, but they just want to really make sure before they go and disable or delete that account. Or maybe they have suspicions of someone, maybe a bad actor in the environment, and they want to know where that account has been used inside of the organization. What computers is it logged on to? How much has it logged on over the past 7 days or 2 weeks or whatever period of time? The Authentications tab is something really interesting because it consolidates all of the authentication that's going on, all your logons, all your requests to file servers, member servers, etc. And it consolidates all of that auth data into one view and makes it searchable. So if I want to see, for example, what my account has done in the last 7 days, I can just search for my account in the list, and it'll come up in this filter. When I click the filter, like everything else in Power BI, it'll filter down everything on the page, and I can see what this account has actually done. So this top visual shows us the top accounts. Since I'm filtered down to just me, it only shows me right now, but I can see all the computers that I'm actually accessing or logging into. So, this 2.67 computer, I've hit that 25,000 times in the last 7 days. So maybe that might be suspicious. Maybe that might be something I want to look into. What was I doing against that particular node? And that'll give me that ability to kind of drill down and go further in. We also see the authentication suites that we're using. So what's using Kerberos, what's using NTLM, if we have wdigest or weak Kerberos encryption ciphers, we'll see the Kerberos encryption ciphers here. So we have that opportunity to not just target where the account's going, but also is it using the most modern and most secure methods of authenticating, which is really important, especially if it's a highly privileged account.
Yeah.
One request that we've had and that we're currently in development on is how do I say click in and say, okay, here's this event right here that's got 15,000 authentications, but maybe I want to go and see that. I want to drill in and see those 15,000 authentications individually. So we're actually working on an addition for a customer where when we see an event that we're interested in, we're actually hyperlinking it right back into the log analytics instance itself. So if I want to get more detail about these 238 events that JJ Watt did, I can just click on this link and it'll actually open up a browser page, bring me into that back-end database, and pass the query parameter that was actually in the context of that line right into log analytics and return those record results for me. The number's
that's really
not
cool.
Yeah, thanks. This will be coming out in one of the next versions in probably the next couple weeks. The record count might be a little bit different because, while vast queries from the same data source, it refreshes as you schedule it. So whereas this is actually a real-time query against the backend. So sometimes that, even though it's a 238 over there and 241 here, it's the same data. It's just passing that context in.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like J.J. Watt, by the way. I don't trust Tom Brady. I saw you had another.
Likewise.
I'm with you.
Let me just apologize in advance to all the people in New England. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. I've suffered. I'm a Dolphin fan. I'm still suffering.
You guys got Amendola.
Yay. We lost Landry and Sue. Well, thanks, Brian. That was awesome.
Thank you.
And hey, man, you're in the Toronto office, right?
I'm working from home right now, but I'm based in the Toronto office, yes.
Yeah. So I've been there. I went there a long time ago to train all of our product support engineers in Canada on Windows 95, which, obviously was pre-95, so I think it was like 94 or something like that. And the thing that freaked me out the most was that you guys have black squirrels, and I've never seen that before. So I was like, oh, look, is that a skunk? And no, it was a squirrel. I know it's stupid, but it was funny. But now all the Bare Naked Ladies songs make sense. So, anyway, thank you again for doing that. That was awesome. I do have a couple of questions. Number one, so who is this available to? If I'm a customer and I've watched this, but I'm still on-prem, is this something that I can do?
So first, let me address the technical requirements of it, and then I'll pass it over to John to address the delivery. So for the technical requirements of Project Vast, the first requirement is that you need to have Azure Log Analytics, and this is a pay-per-use cloud service, so it's something that you can subscribe to and pay on a per-demand basis. For the solution to function, we need it installed on all of the domain controllers. And while it is a cloud solution, the domain controllers don't need direct communication to the internet. We could actually have that traffic pass through a proxy, so you don't have to worry about hanging your DCs out on the internet or anything like that. Other than the log analytics piece, and log analytics is actually available in both Azure Commercial Cloud and Azure Government Cloud. So it's available to both private and public sector customers. Other than that piece, we'll also need at least the Power BI desktop solution, which is what you saw in my demo, which is where we build the report and analyze the data. And optionally, you can add on Power BI Pro, which is the cloud version of Power BI. So that would allow us to publish that data into the cloud and have a cloud-based dashboard. So instead of users having to use a desktop client to get at the data and passing around a report file, we could simply have them go to a cloud service and perform that same kind of analysis that you saw me start to do in the Power BI desktop application.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, all right, I'm a customer. You guys have convinced me. I've decided to purchase it. How do I implement it? Does it come on floppies? Is there like
carrier pigeon?
What do I do next?
So as a customer, as a Premier customer specifically, you would talk with your TAM. And right now, so we're recording this in March of 2018, and right now we're in pilot, which means that Brian and I would come on site. We're still very much developing the solution, but it's good enough that customers are piloting it and it's going very well. So right now it would be a custom dispatch. 4 days we would be on site. We would work through the implementation, the configuration, any problems we had, and then make sure that customers really understood the data they were getting back. And Lex, in the beginning of the next fiscal year, we anticipate this will become what we call level 3 IP or intellectual property, which means if folks are familiar, they could kind of order it as a service through Premier. They would simply contact their TAM and say, I want a, whatever we end up calling it, a vast implementation. And it would be a set price and a set number of hours, if you will, and it would be delivered that way through local resources that we plan to.
Just like we do for workshops and other things right now.
Exactly. And that'll be in the next, we think, 3 months or so.
So where do I get more information? I've watched this. I liked it. Now, I want to read more about it. Is there a website or is there anything external that I can get to that where I can find more information about the offering?
Yes, we're going to be using the Security PFE blog on MSDN. We will be blogging about the solution, and we're also going to put some customer-facing data sheets and some other collateral out there. So take a look at Security PFE on MSDN site for the information.
Okay, thanks. And we can throw that link up.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
So listen, guys, thank you so much for doing the show. I certainly appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. I love the Power BI stuff, and it's rare that we only have one slide. So thank you so much for
that. We try no death by PowerPoint, Lex.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, that's it for this show. Thanks for watching, and that's your Taste of Premier.